Welcome to our August Lunch and Learn. Today we're honored to have Ashley Cornelison from the Georgia Research Alliance. Ashley is the Operations Director for GRA. And for many of you who have benefited from the GRA Ventures program, you've benefited from her work as well. She manages the day-to-day operations, makes sure everything goes smoothly, the checks are cleared, and so forth. I want to say before we begin, we'll be taking photographs and video. If anyone objects to that, please let Amy know so she can Photoshop you out. So, but I don't think we get a waiver. So, but Ashley is a graduate of the University of Georgia, so she's coming back as a bachelor's in business management from the Terry College of Business, and has been with GRA for a few years now, and prior to that was working in the law office doing legal assistance. And as I said, she's an integral part to the GRA team. All of us have benefited from her work if we've been part of that program. So please join me in welcoming Ashley Cornelison.
Second while I get hooked up. Okay, well, thanks for the introduction, Stefan. Like you said, I'm Ashley Cornelison with the Georgia Research Alliance. I've been at GRA for about 4.5 years now. It's just been a fantastic experience working with the GRA, and all the technologies that we get to review is just really, really cool. So some of you may already know about the Georgia Research Alliance, and some of you may be hearing about it for the first time. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick overview about the organization, and then I'll talk about the programs in which we invest in. And sorry, we're having a slight technical issues with the presenter view, so it's going to be slightly off. Okay. So the GRA, the concept for the Georgia Research Alliance actually came into fruition in the 1980s when the state of Georgia lost a bid for a large microelectronics company to locate their headquarters here in Atlanta. And that was a big loss for the state, and the governor went to the civic business leaders here and asked them, what can we do to make Georgia more economically competitive? And that's when the civic leaders, as well as McKinsey & Company, did a study to determine that we really needed to invest more in our research institutions in state-of-the-art technology. And that we were going to need really all of the aligned interests between industry, government, and universities to do so. There was going to need to create an organization that would manage this process. So in 1990, the GRA Ventures, or GRA, was launched, and with a mission to increase research capacity as well as increase commercialization. Okay, so we are really an interesting coalition between the universities, the state, and the business communities. We have 8 partner institutions, and these are all the large major research institutions from the state. We are funded, our programs are funded by the state of Georgia, and we align under the Board of Regents and the university system. And then our operations are funded privately by donations, mostly by large corporate donors. And what's really unique about the Georgia Research Alliance is that we've had a lot of support from the business executives here in Georgia, from all the major corporations. We have a 40-person board, which is rather substantial, from all like C-level executives from these corporations, as well as the chancellors on our board and all the university presidents. So there's 3 areas in which we invest in, and that's recruitment of eminent scholars in the invention stage, early commercialization through GRA Ventures, and then acceleration through the GRA Venture Fund. The first area, invention, and this is really what GRA was originally created for, was to recruit eminent scholars. And GRA assists in every aspect of recruiting the scholars. We work with the institutions to do so. We have currently 63 eminent scholars in our academy. These scholars have generated more than $300 million in competitively funded research activity in last year alone, and this is primarily federal funds. They support 1,600 jobs within their labs, and they're responsible for 1,000 plus invention disclosures and have received hundreds of issued patents. This has really elevated Georgia's profile nationally and internationally. These are our scholars here at the University of Georgia. We have 16 current scholars, with our most recent one, Karen Norris, up on the top left. She will be here in September. She is studying infectious diseases, and we actually have a 17th recruit to add to that list coming up soon. And then part of the scholars is really investment in state-of-the-art infrastructure. We've invested over $500 million across all campuses to date, and this is a photo actually of the NMR spectroscopy over at the CCRC. So the second area, which probably most of you are interested in, is our funding programs. And this is through the GRA Ventures program. We're a technology-based economic development program focused on creating companies. We look at primarily science and technology, intellectual property, and they must come through the university labs. It's a milestone-based program which provides grant and loan funding, as well as mentorship and advice to facilitate in the commercialization process. And it covers the innovation continuum from idea generation to seed investment. And we fund anything from aerospace to zebrafish and everything in between. So it's really, really diverse. So the goals of the GRA Ventures is really to move the technology out of the lab and into the marketplace, and to create high value jobs through the company creation while strengthening local, regional, and national economies. And to do this, we provide resources to address the management, market, and technical risks, and hopefully make the process a little bit easier to go through transferring the technology here out of the labs and the universities to the market. So there are 3 phases to our program of GRA Ventures. The first 2 phases are grants to the university, while the third phase is actually a loan directly to the company. Because our funds come through the state, we have to abide by State Gratuities Act. So there are restrictions for use of funding in phases 1 and 2, and that no company employees can be paid off grants, no equity holders can be paid off grants, and then there's a few other things like some legal costs that we don't cover. But primarily it's money that's going to the university into the lab to develop the technology. So our first phase is the proof of concept. It's up to $50,000 in a grant to the university, and it's really to address the question, does it make sense to form a company? And so we'll put some money at risk to look at the technology opportunity, as well as perform market assessments, maybe some customer discovery. We're really trying to get to go, no-go decisions quickly as to whether it makes sense to form that company. Our second phase is really the launch phase. And here we're looking at maybe like prototype development, product refinement, where it could be a relevant animal model study. It's a reduction to practice, really. And that's also a grant to the university, typically up to $100,000. These are all funded based on milestone achievement. And it does require a dollar-for-dollar match. Typically, it's in the form of like SBIRs, maybe some angel investment. We don't consider basic research funding as a match. It really has to have like a commercial validation. And then the third The third phase is the company scale up, and this is really to grow the business and to accelerate. This is a loan to the company. It's no longer to the university, so the funds can be utilized however the company pleases. It's up to $250,000 in 2 or more tranches. The loan is a 5% simple interest, 5-year balloon note. And then we have been seeing that typically at the end of 5 years, though, companies still often do not have the ability to pay in full at that point. So we do have the option to renegotiate the loan and do an extended 5-year payment plan. So theoretically, it's a 10-year note. We have the option as well to convert that to equity, but prefer not to, and do so on a case-by-case basis when really maybe an investor wants a company to clean up their balance sheet or that sort of thing. And then I don't think, did I mention there's 15% warrant coverage also associated with these loans. They now have a senior position. A few years ago, we were just doing completely subordinated debt and finding that we would get washed out many times. So still, it's a rather friendly terms for the loans, much friendlier than going to maybe a traditional bank. Feel free to ask questions if anybody has any. So there are some changes to the program starting in FY17. We're a really lean organization. There's just 3 of us on the venture side. It's Lee Heron, myself, and Connor Seabrook. And so what we've started to look at is doing a 2-page pre-proposal. The proposals currently are a 10-page submission, which takes quite a long time for us to review internally and then make a decision. So what we're doing now is a pre-proposal, so hopefully we can vet out some right out of the gate, and then also spend more time with those companies that we will be funding by more face-to-face meetings.
Excuse me, Ashley.
Yep.
So with those pre-proposals, when you're reviewing them,
Yeah.
do you put a priority on the technical or the business side of those proposals? What are you looking for that would qualify it to be invited to submit a phase 1?
Yeah, so the template has a little bit about the market. We want to see that there is a market out there that could, sustain a company, and that it's large enough for what we're looking at. The state really holds us accountable for creating jobs in Georgia. So we're not really looking to fund maybe hobby companies that might employ like a relative or 1 or 2 people. We really are looking for high growth companies that employ 15 or more individuals. But we do look at the business plan, I guess, but within the pre-proposal, we don't need to see a really vetted plan, but we do want to see that there's been thought put into how you could commercialize it. And then with the technical, doesn't need to be fully developed, because we will be willing to put money just to see if it's even a viable product. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is a rather busy slide, just showing the process flow chart for our new FY17, and it's really that the faculty member has a concept or an idea. They go to their university representative who has the template for the pre-proposal, submit the pre-proposal through the university representative to the Georgia Research Alliance. We review it, then we either decline a full submission, or we will invite the faculty as well as the university representative to meet with us, and we'll talk about a roadmap to developing the full proposal and hopefully help identify those critical go, no-go decisions right out of the gate that we would like to see. And then Based on that meeting, we're invited to submit a full proposal, and then it goes through our typical review process, which is an internal review of the full 10-page proposal, an external review, and then we'll make a funding decision. We're hoping to go through this whole process in about 60 days, so I think that's pretty quick, especially considering, you know, how long it takes other grant organizations to get back, especially federal. So, and just to mention about our external reviewers, we always review our phase 1 proposals, phase 1As and phase 2As with our external reviewers. We have a network of about 160 volunteers that are just friends to the GRA that usually have some sort of specialty. And whenever we get a proposal, we try to send it to those individuals with relevant knowledge of that industry or technology. So what are some of the things that we think are critical success factors in GRA Ventures? Probably the number one thing is team. And that being that the importance of bringing in stage appropriate management. With the realization that probably everyone is faculty member, and we don't want any of the faculty members to quit their day jobs. But with also the realization that a real company is not just a nights and weekends thing, and that you have to bring a team around you to really get something going. The second thing would be understanding the relevant risk factors and identifying those first at an early stage rather than assuming that they will get done at a later time. So maybe going ahead and looking at regulatory issues rather than, you know, assuming like, oh, we're good. And then the third thing would really be a realistic assessment of the commercial viability. One thing that we're seeing as of lately would be really early incorporation of companies, which is hard to justify going through phase 1 of GRA Ventures, primarily because it creates a biased opinion. The point of the phase 1 is really to determine, does it make sense to form a company? And if a company's already been incorporated, then that decision's already been made. And then you're gonna try everything you can to get to that yes decision rather than, you know, a yes or possibly a no.
Ashley,
Yep.
that point.
Hey, Alex.
To submit an SBIR, you have to already have formed a company, so there's that catch-22.
There is.
Good point, but the government requires you to be a corporation or a company before you file an SBIR. How do you get around that?
Well, we know that is going to be an issue. You know, we do require that match in phase 2. So if it's an SBIR and you do have to incorporate, but at least waiting till you've gone through maybe some of the phase 1 and taken out some of the risk. And I think that makes for a better proposal anyways for an SBIR. But we understand that it is going to come up and we're okay with that. But it also creates a lot more conflict of interest within the university once there's a company incorporated. So, you know, it's just a little bit more effort to manage that process as well. I know it's a catch-22 a little bit, but okay, so the statistics of GRA Ventures. We've looked at 445 different technologies. We funded 350 of those, so I think that's around like a 79% hit rate, which is pretty substantial. We've done that through 750 grants and loans, invested $40 million to date just through this program. These companies have created 1,500 high-value jobs and generated $660 million in company revenues for the state of Georgia. We currently have 170 companies active in our portfolio. And this was a big milestone for the Georgia Research Alliance earlier this year. We hit $1 billion received by GRA Ventures companies in outside investment. So what are our statistics at the University of Georgia? We've looked at 55 unique technologies and funded 42 of those. So I think that's about a 76% hit rate, which is pretty on par with what we're seeing across all the institutions. And then we've invested $5 million through the program to UGA. Little shout out to Stefan and Ian. So if you're interested in submitting a proposal, this is who you would go to, Stefan Schultz or Ian Biggs, and they would work with you to get that submitted to the Georgia Research Alliance. So I do have an example of a video, not quite sure if it's going to work, but we'll do it. This is a company that has gone through the GRA Ventures process, was with Dr. Reeves. He's since retired here at the university, and I think that there was even collaboration with UGA and Georgia Tech on this project. I just wanted to play it because I think Greg Bevere does a nice job talking about how GRA has helped them. Okay, no volume. Okay, might have to skip that one. I knew I should have gone no video. They never work.
I can give everybody a link to that video. So you
Okay, yes, it's also on the GRA's website if you're interested in viewing it. I'll try one more time at the end, maybe when we're doing questions, and see if I can get it to work. Did work for like 1 second earlier, so. Okay, and then the third area in which we invest is through the GRA Venture Fund. And this is a separate entity formed by the Georgia Research Alliance Board of Trustees in 2009. And they really saw a gap in funding, especially in 2009 in the recession. There wasn't a lot of investing in early stage companies. And so they formed the GRA Venture Fund with the hopes of bridging that gap in funding. It's a unique public-private investment. The investors are the state of Georgia. The university research foundations are also investors, as well as high net worth individuals in the state. Originally, it was set up as a $20 million fund, and then about a year ago, I guess, they went out and raised an extra $25.1 million. So we have $45 million under management. And another awesome thing that the state had done was set up these tax incentives for investors. So the investors all get 25% tax incentives for their investment, which is pretty unheard of, I think. I've not heard of that model from any of the other states. The primary thing to look at here is that investment by the GRA Venture Fund is captive to companies that come through the GRA Ventures portfolio. The fund is also a lean organization. Show on the next slide, we have one managing director, Michelle Girard, and so we really have to do a lot of the diligence through the GRA Ventures program. And hopefully, by phase 3, we've gotten to know the company really well at that point, and we can make a recommendation to Michelle to start her diligence process. So the statistics on the fund are that they've invested $17.5 million to date through 11 companies. Our board actually approved another investment as of last week, so once that closes, we should be up to 12 companies. And our $17.5 million has been matched with $440 million in outside capital from strategic investors and other venture firms. And there were 521 high-value jobs created from those 11 companies.
Actually, I'm sorry, can you talk about that a little bit more, the process? So the 17.5, does that mean the balance of the fund is available now for other investments? And then the 440, was that investment that matched when you made your investment, or did your investment prime the pump and that investment came subsequently?
Both, I would say. So those are, the 440 is side-by-side investment as well as follow-on investment. In most cases, we've participated in all follow-on rounds anyways. So essentially, I would say most are the matched funds from other strategics in those venture firms. And then the 17.5 is what's been deployed so far. So with like the administrative expenses, I think we have about 25 million left to deploy. So it's a lot. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is a lot. That's great.
Mm-hmm. And this is just my final slide, just to kind of show the ecosystem again about where GRA fits in the process. The early talent recruitment here, aligning with the state of Georgia into the university labs, and then the GRA Ventures program and the GRA Ventures. And then it shows here your other funding opportunities. And hopefully at the end, it's the marketplace. So with that, I'll take any questions that anybody has. Yes.
So this is an impressive program. Have you looked at other states and how GRA Ventures compares to programs that are at other states?
Yes. So GRA is certainly the first of its kind. Other programs or other states have tried to model the Georgia Research Alliance. There have not been many, though, that have been able to get the state support, and definitely not the business support like we have from our community. We did, I would say the closest related to us would be like the Ben Franklin up in Pennsylvania, but I think they have like 4 branches of that throughout the Northeast. And then we like to do kind of these external reviews of our program, where we bring other kind of the CEOs of other companies like GRA in to review our full process, do best practices, what are they doing, what are they seeing out there, and then we'll kind of modify our program. That's actually why we've started going towards the pre-proposals this year, because we realized everybody else was doing it, and also it would be, easier for us, small 3-person team, probably to go to that process also. Yeah, Derek.
So I know you mentioned the milestone-driven budgets, and that's a little bit different than a typical grant. If it's, if the maximum is 50,000, my budget's going to be 50,000.
Right.
So maybe talk a little bit about, staging those milestones and how you do that.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I would say maybe 3 years ago, we were just funding 25, 25, 50, 50, and then the 250 in the loans. We were seeing not necessarily like the results that we wanted to see from that. So we started this idea of funding towards milestones, with the idea that instead of putting kind of a lot of money up front, that we would fund a couple of key milestones first to see whether it makes sense to continue funding. We really needed to show the state that we were being good stewards of those dollars, and we're not just letting it sit there, because actually that's what we would see too, is we would send the funds and then they didn't all get utilized, and we'd have like leftover funds, a lot of no-cost extensions and that sort of thing. But it is a little bit tricky, I would say, to develop a cost per a milestone, especially when you're employing maybe postdocs or other researchers in your lab. But that's something that GRA can help with, as well as Stefan and Ian, when developing the proposal. Does that cover it?
I think in the past it was more traditionally sort of phase 1A, phase 1B, but the
Yep.
milestone period you could go 1A, 1B, 1C.
Yep, right, because we are looking to do smaller checks, but maybe more frequently. So it used to be just A and B, but now we could run the alphabet and do A, B, C, D, E, whatever. I think we've only gotten as far as D, though, so far. So.
Could you talk a little bit about the Georgia Food Scholars? How do you go about finding those?
university?
So the university actually comes to us with candidates, and then we help vetting out the candidates. Our CEO and vice president, and we have an in-house scientist, Amy Moore, that goes and visits all the candidates, and then they help vet that process for the institutions. Honestly, it's typically word of mouth from other scholars that are saying, like, you've got to go out and get this person, and we'll help with that recruitment of convincing them to come to the university, helping to outfit their labs, encouraging them to bring other members of their team with them. But it's really, I would say, like word of mouth, or the university identifies like who they need and what type of fields, and then that's when we'll start looking for someone. But I don't think that we bring forward anyone that says like we have to have this person. It's usually the universities asking us to assist in that process.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question, suggestion. During
Okay.
phase 2,
Yep.
the investment or the funds started for product development and commercialization, right? Versus
Right.
proof of concept for phase 1.
Right.
Have you guys thought about, or could be beneficial to give part of this money to the company instead of 100% to the university? Sometimes the money goes to the university.
Yeah.
It's hard to use these
Yeah.
commercialization instead of paying someone to develop it, which is good.
Mhm.
Have you thought about this, having a small percentage of this money, maybe half and half or something?
Yep. Because there's state funds, the State Gratuities Act prohibits us from doing a grant to a for-profit company. But that's why we started the phase 3 loan program. We do have flexibility to maybe go from like a 2A to the loan program, but that would be like a non-traditional course, maybe like by exception only for reasons that, you know, they just cannot use the funds in some manner through a grant. But we just can't give grants to for-profit companies.